Okay, so welcome everyone, and bear with us as we get our technology straightened out. I'm Kwesi Rollins, Senior Vice President for Leadership Engagement at IEL, Institute for Educational Leadership in Washington, D.C., and also Chair of the Attendance Works Advisory Board. And so you'll hear a little bit from me today. You'll hear from Hetty, and we've got a wonderful first webinar to launch this year's campaign. Hetty Chang is our illustrious executive director and leads a wonderful team, an incredible team of folks who are really trying to move the needle on this issue of chronic absenteeism. Let's go to the next slide. I think most of you know a little bit about IEL. We're the home for the Coalition for Community Schools. Among other things, we do a great deal of work around youth with disabilities and their transition into the workforce. We support a lot of community-based organizations that are trying to improve the youth leadership and development of immigrant and refugee youth. We just do a great deal of work that's connected to this, and chronic absenteeism is one of our most important indicators of success of our efforts. And so this is our 60th year. We've been at it for a while, and we've partnered with so many folks over the years to just improve outcomes for children, youth, and families, and we'll continue to do so for years to come. Next slide. Attendance Works, of course, is really, since its launch in 2010, it's become the nation's go-to resource for all things chronic absenteeism. You can learn much more at our website. Attendance Works is devoted to this issue, advancing better policy, making sure that we have the latest data on these issues, and also that we have the information we need to improve our practice and address these issues. Next slide. We've got a great agenda for you today. This is the first in the series of webinars, and I'll go through those topics later. But today we're exploring the role of teachers in improving attendance. And so we'll hear from a couple of teachers in different parts of the country, and we'll also hear from folks who represent the systems that support teachers in engagement and attendance. And so Isis Blast, Laura Tellez, Karen Andrews, James Arndt, Métis, and I pronounced her name wrong, I'm sure, Ramirez, forgive me my T, and Maria Torres Perez are just some of the wonderful folks we'll hear from, and we'll hear from you in the Q&A section. Next. We want to thank our convening partners for this year's campaign. Attendance Works, obviously, the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, Everyone Graduates Center, Future Ed, Healthy Schools Campaign, Mentor, Inc., National League of Cities, and the United Way. And you can find out more from this website URL. We'll put that in the chat for a full list of national and state campaign partners. Next slide, Pele. So our slogan for 2024 is be present and be powerful. We know that across the spectrum, and we'll hear a little bit about that today, from cradle to career, there are different reasons for different age groups as to why chronic absence has grown. And so we are not looking at one-size-fits-all solutions, but after it's all said and done, being present and being powerful is part of how we're going to get there, and all of us have a role to play. Next slide. As I mentioned, this is webinar 1 of 4. You'll see all of the dates here, and we'll continue to remind you on the front line of attendance and engagement, the crucial role of teachers. We've got a wonderful series of 4 webinars for the rest of this year, and we hope that you'll come and be a part of all of them. Next slide. We have our key messages for this year's theme. We know that strong, trusting relationships are core to not only addressing the issue, but to promoting a feeling of belonging. And that's fundamental in improving student attendance and student engagement. They're much more likely to attend school if they feel safe. We need positive problem-solving approaches, and many of you are in places, the District of Columbia is one of them, where some of our policymakers in kind of knee-jerk fashion are beginning to show signs of leaning on punitive approaches. They really don't work. there really isn't a lot of evidence that punitive approaches work. What we do have evidence around is that when the whole community collaborates with families and schools, we can overcome barriers to attendance and engagement. Next slide. A special thank to our corporate sponsors, Kaiser Permanente and Rawi K-12, attendance improvement. Next slide. I'm just not pronouncing anything well today, but it is what it is. And then lastly, every little bit helps. We know that many of you are working folks, and it seems ridiculous to be asked to support an organization, and yet we need your support. This is how we keep the engine running. This is how we keep our services free. This is how we keep these webinars free. This is how we conduct all of our research. We rely on contributors like you to help us keep Attendance Works resources free for everyone. So join the movement and donate today. Consider it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over, I believe our next slide, I'm turning it over to Hetty Chang, and she's going to guide us through our defining terms and the rest of our webinar. Thanks, Hetty.
Thank you so much, Kwesi. And I do want to appreciate so many of you showing up on spring break, which is the case for some folks, and including some of our presenters today. This is also why we're going to be recording this and making sure these slides are available so people can watch it afterwards and hold your own watch parties. And if you're watching with a group, we have a little discussion guide, so feel free to go and get that and then have a chance to talk about this and reflect on what you're hearing today and what it means for your own communities. It is my privilege to be able to make sure that we're all on the same page. So want to start by just defining terms. We talk about average daily attendance, which is how many kids typically show up each day. That usually gives us overall measures like, oh, the day after Halloween, not so good. We might want to think about half-day parent-teacher conferences because it's creating some challenges for kids and families coming with that half day. Or sometimes it gives you insights like, oh, when the weather gets bad, attendance gets worse, and we better invest in those resources to make sure all the kids have the clothes they need to show up. So that's helpful, but it masks how many kids are missing so much school that they might be academically at risk or at risk in other ways. And this is different from truancy, which is usually focused just on unexcused absences, tends to kind of come from a compliance mode. You know, you got to show up to school or else. A little bit more legally connects to legal sanctions. And what we've really been trying to emphasize and define is that, you know what, we got to watch when kids miss too much school for any reason. And we've defined that as missing 10% or more of school. This is a relatively new metric, only about 10 years old. And thank God we have it, because now in the aftermath of the pandemic, it's really allowing us to notice who's showing up and who's not and how we can make a difference. This is about emphasizing the impact of missed days on engagement opportunities, learning opportunities. It's about taking a prevention-oriented problem-solving approach and recognizing that when kids miss school, the key is not to go into blame, but to say, what happened? How can I help you, and partner with kids and families to make sure they can be there. And if you go to the next slide, what we know is that since the pandemic, in the aftermath of the pandemic, chronic absence has nearly doubled. The latest data we have nationally is for 21-22, showing it went to almost 15 million kids. But the data from 22-23, which is now available in most states, shows it's only decreased a tiny little bit. So I'm glad it's starting to go in the right direction, but it means we have to really take this issue and play persistent and continual action, take continual action to re-engage our kids and make sure they have what they need to show up to school. And if you go to the next slide, this is so important because one of the things we're seeing is it's not just the nearly 1 out of 3 kids who are now chronically absent. It's the 2 out of 3 kids who are in a school with 20% or higher levels of chronic absence. And when chronic absence is that high, the churn is affecting everyone. It's affecting the ability of teachers to teach, teachers to set classroom norms, and kids to learn. So this is why we have to start really thinking about how do we get everyone involved in supporting attendance and engagement. Next slide. And it's also understanding what are the challenges So part of the reason why you want to move away from punitive action is punitive action doesn't allow you to build those partnerships with kids, families, educators that help us unpack why kids might miss too much school and what will help get them there. Is it barriers? Is it aversion? Is it disengagement? Is it misconceptions? And we know some of the things have gotten much more challenging. You know, we kind of during the pandemic said, oh, we'll move to virtual learning. And now with their families that fully understand all the benefits of being in school so that, you know what, just being online doesn't get you what you need. You got to be here in person. And that misconception we are still struggling with. I think that's part of the reasons why levels remain so high. We also have to make sure that kids and families know how to take those prevention-oriented steps to make sure they don't get sick. And if they do have minor ailments, they know when to stay home and when to come to school. We got to make sure that school's engaging, that we're making sure that kids aren't missing school because of challenging issues like bullying. And we got to make sure, especially in our high poverty communities, we're addressing those huge barriers like poor transportation, housing insecurity. And when we know what's happening, we can look both for what an individual child might need, as well as what are issues that are affecting lots of kids, so we can take programmatic solutions. And if you go to the next slide, it's really about reestablishing these positive conditions for learning that got eroded during the pandemic and are going to take a while for us to reestablish. Making sure kids feel physically, emotionally healthy and safe, a sense of belonging, connection, support, academic challenge and engagement, and that we're investing in the students and the teachers and the staff who need the well-being and the wellness so they can build those relationships that are so essential. Next slide. This is really about making sure all our schools can take a tiered support. And when you have 20% or more of kids, you need a system. It's not just a couple people who can address this. It means we need a system of support where everyone in the school, particularly our teachers who are at the front line, are part of this work. And if you take the next slide, you can see, you know, and I'm sure there are more than these, but when we think about leveraging the role of teachers, because they really are the folks who get to see kids every day, who have those relationships. And I'm not talking about just asking teachers to do more. I'm talking about investing and supporting them and making sure as systems, we make it possible for teachers to leverage their role so that they can create that sense of belonging among students and families, whether that's about how they welcome them, how they forge those positive relationships, how they create engaging and relevant learning opportunities. So kids and families know why they need to show up every day because they are gaining the skills they need for a better future. And providing those supportive learning environments so kids don't feel anxious, that kids can really see that even if they're struggling, they can still show up to school. Adopting those effective messaging, making sure that kids feel missed and welcomed, making sure that they understand what learning opportunities they miss, recognizing good and improved, not just perfect attendance. Perfect attendance only helps the kids who are going to show up all the time, show up. And we need to make sure that every kid can always feel like they have a reason to show up. And it's emphasizing attendance at strategic points throughout the year. Next slide. It's also about taking things like parent-teacher conferences, which we already mostly do, and ensuring we're integrating attention to attendance into it. Whether that's helping those kids who have good attendance feel recognized and can share what they're doing, to making sure that we take more time, bring in more resources so the kids with the most struggling attendance, we can really do a thoughtful job of making sure they can show up to school every day and gain access to the learning opportunities that they so need. So with that, we're now going to bring a whole panel to talk about what do these concepts look like in action? What does that mean for our schools and our districts and our communities to support teachers in this role? And if we can go to we can still keep up the slides, if you don't mind, Pele, thank you. I'm just going to go through really quickly. We'll have Isis Blas and Laura Tellez. Those are both teachers at a high school and an elementary school, and they will be talking to us about what this means for them as teachers. And then if you go to the next slide, we're going to have Karen Andrews, who's the National Director of the Center for High School Success, James Arnott, who's the principal for Camelback High School in Phoenix, Arizona, Maite Ramirez, who's the principal at Campus Park Elementary School in Livingston Union School District, Maria Torres Perez, who's the director of categorical programs and special projects at Livingston Union School District in California. And together, we're going to paint a picture of what does it look like for teachers to really be supported in that front line and in making sure kids are engaged and having their barriers to attendance addressed. And with that, I'm actually going to start us off with our principals, though, because what we felt is it would be really helpful for you to have a picture of these two very different schools. We have one in a rural area, one in an urban area, two different states, but we wanted you all to get a picture of what those schools were like, so that then you can, and what they're doing as a school, what their demographics and what their data is, and then we're going to go and ask our teachers to share their experiences at the front line. So let's start with Maite Ramirez. Maite, please tell us a little bit about Livingston and Campus Park Elementary.
Hi, good afternoon. We are located in Livingston, and it's located directly off of Highway 99.
And I'm going to suggest we shift to the next slide, 2 more slides, so we see the map. So when you say Highway 99, which cuts
Highway 99
California, they see what you're talking about.
Thank you. In the San Joaquin Valley between Sacramento and Fresno, it's about an hour and a half from Fresno, maybe 2, Sacramento the same. Livingston enjoys the benefits of a small community, rural, ranch and farmland that sustains our economy, primarily agriculture. You'll see a lot of the sweet potato. We have the sweet potato festival here. Livingston Union School District is located right in the heart of Livingston City. A rural school district. It covers about 80 square miles. It serves approximately 2,500 students within 4 schools. So we have Campus Park Elementary, Selma Herndon Elementary, Yamato Colony Elementary, and Livingston Middle School.
And tell us a little more about the demographics of your school and what you know about your chronic absence and attendance rates.
So if I can go to the next slide, that would be great. And our next slide, I'm doing a cheat sheet here. Our next slide, I have 466 beautiful students. Our demographics, 91% of our student population are Hispanic. The others are, and I need to see a little bit closer. We have about 5% Asian, 2% Caucasian, and 2% other ethnicities.
All right.
24, so my apologies. We have it froze on me. We have 24 teachers. It is a TK5 school. We have a dual language program.
And for those of you who are not in California, TK means transitional kindergarten.
We have 52% of our student population are English language learners. 78% of our students are eligible for free and reduced lunch. And our average daily attendance is 91.4%.
Why don't we go to the next slide, though? That kind of helps people see both your chronic absence and your average daily attendance.
And we're very fortunate that if you look at the slide here, since I've been a principal at Campus Park and even beyond, 2018, 2017, we were at 96.7% average daily attendance with 3.3. And across the board, you'll see that we've always maintained a low chronic absenteeism rate. However, last year we were at 12.3%. And one of the things that makes us think about why is it, we ask these questions, why is it that it was so high? Well, in 2022, 2023, our attendance rate was low because it was at transitioning from COVID guidelines. You know, some parents, if someone had a cough, were not feeling well, they would not send them to school. So we had to retrain, re-educate our parents to make sure that if the student was not having diarrhea, vomiting, or a fever, to send them to school. So it was a transitional period for us. That's why we believe that our chronic absenteeism rate was high. Since then, we've dropped to 8.3, 8.6, which we still feel it's a little bit high. And we continue to work with our team to make sure that we educate our parents, we educate our students. That's really important. And as a school, we build that relationship with our parents and school to make sure that they come to school every day on time and ready to go, ready to learn.
So Principal Ramirez, thank you so much. I will also just say California's chronic absence rates were around 25% statewide. So your chronic absence rates, as much as, and this is partly why you're here, because you're so committed to making it better, are still significantly better than what we're seeing in other places. And that's partly how we identified you. Now, with that, I want to actually ask James Arndt to join us from Camelback and talk to us. So we have a picture of the other school we're going to be hearing from. Tell us about Camelback High School.
Yeah, and if we can go to the next slide. So, hey, everyone, my name's James, proud principal of Camelback High School in Phoenix, Arizona. We are a big old friendly urban high school, 2,200 students. You can kind of see our demographic breakdown there. A really unique thing to Arizona is that we don't generally have unified districts, at least not in the central city, in the urban center. So I have 43, that's correct, 43 different schools that send us 8th graders. You can imagine that sort of a melting pot in their 9th grade year. We're 92% Title I. So, we, by and large, have a population that's living below the poverty line. And then, a 15% population identifies as ELD and then 21% ESS. And I have found that attendance things are very contextual. And so I wanted to give you just a piece of our context. And if we go to the next slide, I can add on a little more, which is also unique to Arizona. So each little purple dot here is a household that comes to our high school, Camelback High. And so Camelback is pretty close to Camelback Road, if you can see your screen there. And what you notice is that there are way more dots outside of that little red box than inside. And that's because only 15% of our students live in the same zip code as the school. And so when it comes to challenges with attendance, we are an urban large high school that is not close to where our kids live. So I think in some ways we have the most real version of this challenge, and we're ready to face it head on. And so if we can go to the next slide, just a little evidence of our success here. We started a 9th grade success program. We call it our freshman house. You'll hear from the Center for High School Success, Karen Andrews, later, and she'll explain a little bit of this. But we've implemented this program for our 9th graders. And if you see, since the return from COVID in 2021, we've reduced chronic absenteeism by 20%. By 20%, we've reduced it, which we're very proud of. We think that's great. 25% chronically absent is still too high. It's better than the national average, but it's still too high. Like, we have room to go. But our okay absences have also increased by 9%. So we have many more kids attending school and in the correct number of days. And what I want to add, I saw someone in the discussion that already said, so-and-so said, this is just the way it is. It's not going to get better. And I would call BS on that. You have to approach this work with a growth mindset. We very easily in 2021 could have just said, oh, we're screwed. There's no chance. And we didn't. We didn't make that choice. We kept a growth mindset. And while we're not at our destination, we are far along the path. And so I assume that everyone is on this call is on the path. And so good luck. We're excited to share more in the rest of the webinar. And I think it is important to remember that we do have the ability to affect some change here and to improve attendance for our kiddos. So with that, I'll pause.
Yeah, so helpful, and love that growth mindset we have to take. I will say a comparison, Arizona has some of the highest levels of chronic absence in the country, actually. Challenge as a state, I think it's something like 40-something% was what it was is right now where it's running. So Camelback, again, while not where you want it to be, is comparatively better than the state. And I also think what's so important is we'll be at all different levels, and some places are really struggling. The point is to get better. And we can get better whether you're lower, and you can get better even when you're higher levels. And the 20% reduction even through these challenging years of COVID, is an important and impressive feat and shows that it is possible. And I believe it can even get it better. Anyway, with that, we are now gonna invite our two teachers to join us. So Laura Tellez and Isis Blass. Laura is a third grade teacher over at Campus Park. And let's shift, you know what, why don't we just show Laura and Isis, because I don't think they have slides right now. And I'd love for you to tell me first, what do you think helps kids to show up to school? And as a teacher, what are you doing to help them show up? And we're going to start with our elementary school teacher first, and then shift to our high school teacher.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, so for me, as being an elementary school teacher, I teach third grade in a dual language program, which means that I teach 50% English and 50% Spanish. I start from day one. Day one for me is knowing them and letting my students know that we're a family, and as a family, our classroom is our home. So setting that background on them and asking them to building those relationships since day one, showing them that we care about them, and showing interest for their interests, making their interests visible in the classroom. That's something that I do since day one as well. And throughout my lessons, I acknowledge their interests and personalities and learn from their backgrounds and dynamics. I also send like surveys at home, so that way I know how do they behave at home, what are some of the things that they do at home, just so that it helps me in the classroom and they feel a little bit more connected to us. We do our morning check-ins. We love to listen to them and understanding how they're feeling. A lot of the feelings that they have and a lot of the personalities that they have impact our classroom and then our dynamics that we have. And that also reflects on how much they want to be in the classroom. If they feel connected, they're happy to be here. They're happy to be with us, and they're happy to be working together. So that's a must for me. Every day we have to do a check-in in the morning, and then just listening to their check-ins, see how they're feeling, and then seeing that reflection throughout the day makes a difference. I can check in with them throughout the day. I can ask them questions, and they feel the love and they feel the support from us, and not only for me as a teacher, but for the classmates as well. And also I reach out a lot of parents as well when I see some changes on the students. I have a great communication with parents and families, just making sure that I'm always available for them and that they're there to support me in any way that I need as well. If I need to ask them a question, they're always open to do so. And showing those interests and those acknowledging the students' strengths and weaknesses and the lessons that I do is another way that I also have them and make them feel connected and engaged. Asking for the input in our own learning that we have in the classroom, whether that will be strategies to help us be creative. They feel happy to be in the classroom. They feel happy to be working together with all of us. They know that their input is heard and they feel acknowledged, and that makes a difference as well. Having set routines where they feel that they know exactly what the day is going to look like for them, so it's not a surprise, and that helps them be stable and they have that ownership when they come into the classroom. Also, I have a number one rule, which is being kind, and that has helped me and everyone to make a connection of feeling safe in the classroom, understanding that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's okay to have different opinions, but learning as well how to make those differences, how to acknowledge that someone else thinks different than you without being mean and making them feel like they don't belong, and easing that anxiety that they have. When they feel that you care for them, when they feel the kindness around the room, that helps to ease their anxiety when they're in the classroom. And it just makes them feel more comfortable and around their peers and in the classroom itself.
Laura, if I ever had a kid again, it's a little too late, I want them in your classroom. I do want to say that I had the privilege of being in your school and talking to parents, and you see the payoff of the kind of classroom environment that you've just talked about, where parents talk about that kids in your school, they're like, we got to go to school. We're going to be learning, and it's that relationship, and you really see it in how kids and families understand why they should be there every day and feel so connected to you and the other teachers. I'm going to actually shift over for a moment to Isis, and then we'll come back. Well, no, let me ask you the second question. I'll keep, deciding. When kids have a challenge, what happens and how do you help them? Who do you also turn to for support in your school? And so what are some of the challenges you've seen, and when that happens, what happens and who do you turn to for support?
Yes, definitely. And we see that a lot happening too. So my first approach is to ask the student directly what is going on, what's the issue, what's happening. Is it something that is happening in the classroom? It might be something happening at home. And like, again, those daily check-ins help me a lot because I get to know my students and I know when something is happening in their lives and within the day. And sometimes their attitude changes throughout the day. We have a system in our school where I am the first person that reaches out to parents when students are not in the classroom, and I start noticing patterns, and that's when I reach out for help. Also, the staff and the front office, they're very good at like communicating with us teachers. So every time we see a student that is missing days, we knowledge patterns and anything. We have to be checking or clearing off absences daily. So I reach out first. If I don't get to communicate with the parents and I don't get a response back, the staff communicates with them, and then we communicate with each other to see what's going on. If one of us got a notice or a notification of what happened, and then when I see a pattern, and then the staff notices the pattern as well, we reach out to our principal, and that's how we manage the system. It's like a lot of communication, a lot of like checking in with the students and the parents, just having those connections and those relationships with them helps a lot. When students are absent, we send messages and then we just try to make sure that we find the reason why they're absent. I had a student once where the student was feeling, she wasn't here a lot. She started missing class. It was occasionally, and then she started missing a lot more. So I decided to have a little talk with the student on the side, and I asked her directly what was going on. And she told me that she wasn't feeling safe, that she didn't want to be in school, and that she wasn't getting a lot of good grades. So that caused her to feel a little bit more like stress about it, and she started feeling anxious. So she started making up excuses not to be in the classroom. So what I did was talk to the parent to let them know first, so they were aware of what was happening, because the parent didn't have no idea. The student was making up like symptoms that she wasn't feeling great, so she was staying at home, but it was becoming more constant. So that communication with the parents helped a lot, and it just making our staff and our principal aware of what was happening, and just having that conversation with parents, explain what the excuses were for and how our system works of like symptoms of they're allowed to come to school when they have those symptoms, and then just acknowledging the students' stress and working together with her helped her a lot, make her feel more comfortable, make her feel more knowledgeable. And we worked on the areas that she needed to improve on, and we got a solution to our problem for that.
And do you have counselors or health staff that you can turn to for support as well?
Yes, that's part of our system as well. So we have the staff in the front, which is our main office staff. We have our principal, we have our counselor, which is great. Every time we have a student, when we acknowledge patterns, or when we check in with the students that are having a really bad day or a situation happen at home, we don't get into a detail, but we always direct them to the counselor. And the students know that as soon as like they feel a certain way or we notice something, we ask them, do you need to go see our counselor? She's always available for you guys. And they whether agree or they don't agree, or regardless what the situation is, we let our counselor know so that she can kind of like check in with them throughout the day without them being sent directly to her if they don't want to be sent to her. Or we're always open to them. We always have I always have a door open policy for my students, where they feel if anytime they want to come back to the classroom to talk to me about something throughout the day, I'm always available for them. But our counselor is great at doing that as well, and that helps a lot our students.
Thank you so much. Okay, so that was a picture of what this looks like in an elementary school. I would now like Isis to join us, and she is a 9th grade teacher over at Camelback. And so Isis, what does this look like for you? Talk to us about, what keeps our high school kids attending and showing up to school. And as a teacher, what is your role?
First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Um, at the high school level is very different. There is some kind of, I guess, connecting similarities between the elementary level and the high school level, because we do have students that still get dropped off by parents, right? Like parents are still very much involved. However, a lot of the times our biggest issues come from students that have to bus themselves to school. So that's like the biggest issue that we have with the attendance. But to answer your question, what helps students show up to school? I would say a welcoming environment, number one, because they are high schoolers. And like I said, a lot of them really have the choice every single day of whether or not they want to show up. Welcoming environment. My classroom is definitely set up in a way where I have very high expectations. They're very clear. They know where the agenda is for the day. They know what's expected of them every single day when they walk into my classroom. If a student walks in late, I don't stop instruction. I know in the past, I've come across teachers that will stop, or they'll make the student stand by the door and say, I will address you when I get a moment. I don't do any of that. I just keep going. I allow my students to just come in and then they just catch up as quickly as possible, acclimate to the situation, whatever it is. If it becomes like an issue where they're constantly obviously absent and the absenteeism is really becoming an issue, then I will address that at a later time. But for starters, like I said, welcoming environment. I build relationships with my students. I really like to get to know them. We play a lot of just question games. I also open up a lot about my life. Like, I have kids and I used to be a coach. So we talk about sports, things like that. I think that's really important as well, especially because I teach English and, that's not everyone's cup of tea. So I have to kind of make it, spice things up, for lack of a better term. And then, like I said, the clear expectations, the accountability is a big one for me. I'm not one to fall for like crocodile tears. I feel like high schoolers can be a little dramatic sometimes when it comes to like things happening outside of the classroom. I understand that there's some factors that it's out of their control, but I make it very clear to them that in life, sometimes there's factors that we can't control, but then there's still consequences that you have to live up to, right? So I make sure that I reach out to them if they're absent. We have Teams. We use Teams at our school. Every single student has a computer, so and a lot of them have them on their phones as well. So they have the ability to reach out to me with little to no issues. As a matter of fact, I might have mentioned this before, but I've had students that literally I'll be in the middle of teaching and I'll get a notification and say, Miss, the bus is late. I'm on my way, right? Like that's how like the relationship that I have with my students, that they feel super comfortable with letting me know that they're running late and like, I'm coming, right? Like expect me. Visibility is another one that's really big. I know at the elementary level, and I think the reason why I probably do this and it comes very natural to me is that my background is actually in elementary and middle school. Before I started teaching high school. And I love standing outside my classroom. I do. I don't shake hands with all the kids, but I'll stand in the hallways and I'll say hi. And because we have 50-minute periods, a lot of the times I'll see a student going into like the teacher next door, and then they'll be running late to my class. And they know, like, I'm expecting them now because I saw them earlier. So I know they're here, right? And I've been known to come after them on Teams and like, hey, where are you? I saw you earlier, right? Like I hold them accountable. And then, like I said, if it becomes an issue, I reach out to them privately. I'll send them a Teams message. If they've been absent a lot, then I'll say like, hey, I hope you're okay. Like make sure that you come in and see me during, during passing periods or any time after school, reach out. Like I want to make sure that you get caught up over the weekend. So that's some of the things that I do in my classroom day to day to ensure that my students show up.
Yeah, both the high expectations, the relationship building, the care, helping them feel connected to you. And I suspect you probably also try to make sure it's a really interesting English lesson so that they feel motivated by what you're teaching too.
I try.
What are you seeing at the high school level as some of the challenges that keep kids from getting to school? And then when you see that, how do you address them, and who's there to help you figure out the support?
So two of the biggest issues that we have, especially honestly, the majority of my absenteeism and tardiness problems are my first hour class. The rest of the classes, yeah, you have some kids here and there that are, chronically late because, they're walking their boyfriend or their girlfriend to class. That's a big one at the high school level. Or, they're just hanging out with their friends or whatnot. But first hour, the two biggest issues I see is one, the students that are left to kind of fend for themselves in the mornings, like the parents go to work, they leave the kids at home, they're expected to get up, get breakfast or whatever they need to go to the bus stop, catch a bus, sometimes multiple buses. Like Mr. Arndt said, we have the majority of our students are out of area, out of zip code. So they have to take multiple buses to get to our campus. So that's why, and that's why I get those messages like, Miss, the bus was late, or I missed the first bus, I'm on my way, you know, things like that. So that's the first one. The second one, I've actually encountered this one pretty often as well, that we have parents that have multiple kids to drop off in the morning. And of course, they're going to prioritize the younger ones over the high schoolers. So they'll drop off their kindergartner and their, you know, whatever the other grade levels are. And it just, by the time that they're done dropping off everyone, the high schooler just tends to be the one that's constantly late, or late by 5 minutes, or, you know, sometimes it's not very like long period of time that they're late for. But those are the two challenges that I see. The way that I address it in my classroom, the way that I address it when this happens is like, once more, going back to my whole being welcoming and like building relationships, I speak to the student in private. I say like, hey, like I've noticed that you've been tardy these days, or you've been absent a lot. What's going on? And then the student will tell me, they're like, Miss, I'm sorry, like this happened, or whatever it is. And then I go back to the whole expectation things, right? And like accountability. And I say, okay, I understand that you couldn't make it to class. I understand that you were tardy. However, I need to catch you up, right? Because we don't want to keep falling behind. So I need you to come and see me during advisory today, which is like a built-in tutoring period that we have embedded into our bell schedule. So then I say, okay, then you're mine for advisory today. So you better sign out, or I'm going to sign you out, or whatever it is. Or they say, I can't today, Miss, can I come tomorrow? So then like we get into little negotiations, because that's another thing too, that we need to be flexible. Like we really do. Like, I don't feel like we're going to get anything out of students by making them like they're forced to do something, right? Like we want them to buy into the reason why they're here every day. We want them to want to be here. And anyway, so that's what the first thing. And then I already say, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought, the dropping off of the other siblings. You asked about who supports me. Oh my gosh. So we're very fortunate at Camelback High School, not to brag, but we do have a lot of support. The freshman house, which is what I'm part of because I teach freshmen, we have like our own freshman house coordinator, Miss Erica Wimble, and she's amazing. So anytime that we need anything, I need any type of support, like I just message her and say, you know, even if it's something insignificant, right, to the scale of all the issues that we have going on, I can message her and I say, hey, so-and-so is having problems getting here in the morning. Like, can you have a little chat with him? Or can we meet, you know, and talk about him? I'm really worried, or whatnot. So that's one. We also have an attendance liaison that works with all the other grade levels as well. And then that's when we go into like the tier 2, tier 3 things. But as a freshman house teacher, we meet weekly as a team. So I meet with the science teacher and the math teacher and some of the elective teachers that our students have, because they're all like travel like in cohorts, kind of like houses. So we all have the same kids in common. So chances are that if this kid is being late to my class, they're probably having issues with keeping up with work from other classes. So we're able to discuss that on a weekly basis. So that infrastructure in itself really helps support what I'm trying to achieve with my students and holding them accountable.
Maybe that connects to a question that came from one of the people in the chat about, you probably work with like more than 100 students. How do you manage your, you know, sustaining those relationships with all those kids?
I don't know. That's kind of a hard question to answer, because I don't see it as work. Like I just see students every day, right? Like I genuinely am interested. I don't know, maybe I'm just nosy, but I'm generally interested in their lives and their likes and their dislikes. And I feel like it makes me a more effective teacher when I find out about their personal interests and what struggles they're going through. So that way I can try to relate them and embed them as much as I can into my lessons. Like I said, I teach English. So English is already a pretty difficult, in my opinion, it's a difficult subject to teach students, especially when all they see is like, oh, we have to read and write again, right? Like, I don't want them to think that way. So I always, I see it as like, you know, professional development every day. I'm trying to like learn more things to incorporate into my my teacher magic strategies.
Well, thank you. And Lara, I'd like to go back to you. You know, one of the things that we've been hearing about nationally is that most families think that their kids are doing okay. Like 90% of families think their kids are at or above grade level. And a lot of them actually say the reason they think that is because they're getting Bs, because during the pandemic, people kind of didn't want to be harsh. They want to, but then families get this impression that their kids are doing okay, even though sometimes the test scores are suggesting they're not doing so well. And then, and the kids are actually missing a lot of school. How did you communicate, especially in the elementary grades, about where kids are at, what they're missing, and how they need to be in school with your family so that they don't have false impressions about, you know, maybe their kids doing better than they actually are? But that's also a hard thing to have a conversation about with families.
Yes, you're right. And then for us as elementary, like lower grade levels, we don't do grade letter grades. We do numbers. It goes from 1 to 3. And what I do is, as a DLA teacher, we have a lot of meetings with the parents throughout the years, and the communication with them is great. I do a lot of Class Dojo with them, or Parent Square. Those are 2 apps that you can download on your phone. The Parent Square is throughout the district, and the Class Dojo, I just do it for my class, and I know a lot of the teachers here at the school do it. So that's how I communicate, and I communicate with them daily. I don't wait till the end of the month, or I don't wait till the end of the week. I do it daily basis. And like it becomes like a little relationship with the parents as well. I see them when they drop off, when they come and pick up the students, and I get to talk to them one-on-one. So if I notice the student is struggling in a certain area, I reach out to them, and I'm like, I always do my homework based on what they're struggling. And I reach out to them and I let them know what the student is struggling with and see if they can support us like that too. So that's one way that we do it. And then also I have this monthly calendar that I send to parents so they know exactly what we're going to be learning throughout the month. And they get like sheet where they're like they can see that important dates and things like that. I do little flyers that I send out through my dojo so they're aware of what's going on. And I have agendas that they have to write every day. So I get to write little notes in there when I notice that it maybe was behavior, maybe it was just like a glow up. We like to call it something that they did great, because it's not only like the negative comments that we send home. We also focus on some things that they're like maybe growths that they had throughout the week that they were struggling with the previous week. And that's how I communicate a lot. The agenda helps me a lot, and then the apps that we have online. And that's really receiving a text message, so it's very like fast.
Yeah, both of you are exemplifying how do you use technology to stay in ongoing contact, whether it's with the kid or whether it's the family. And it sounds like what it is you're not, you know, it's ongoing conversations to build relationships and also help make sure that kids and families know where things are. So appreciate that. We are going to have Isis and Laura come back. But I want to now shift a moment, because we know that what happens with teachers is also a reflection of what's happening as a school as a whole. And principal leadership is so essential to organizing what's happening at a school as a whole. So Maite, I would like you to talk about, so what are you doing at Campus Park? And let's pull up the slide starting with Campus Park to really support your teachers, help them create support engaging classrooms that keep their kids showing up every day. And then we will shift over to James to tell us what's happening at Camelback.
You know, I'm very lucky, fortunate, and proud to be the principal at Campus Park, because we have a great team. We really do. School-wide, we provide that professional development, but it's not just about professional development. As you heard my teacher, and you know, if we were to invite the rest of my teachers, they will tell you it's a vested interest in them. Isis even mentioned it. It's not a job, it's their students, they're people, and we're working with them on a daily basis. I think the first thing is, you know, we start the day, we start our day with our staff, our students, and our parents by greeting them. That's a number one. As you see them outside, they're either supervising, they're at the front gate, and it's welcoming our students, that smile. Sometimes in the morning, we have rough mornings. Guess what? There's always an adult there to smile to our students and our parents. That's our number one key. Something that we start this school year, year after year, is sharing. And it's not just at the beginning of the year, but throughout the whole entire school year. The same message is the same. We share that with our students, that if we have positive students and we have that positive student relationship, that's what it's going to get to us. We know that students love coming to school because they know teachers care. And sometimes it's the teacher, the cafeteria staff person, the custodial. You would be amazed of that connection that our students have with our staff, our teachers, and our supporting staff. I can share really quickly. I have a student who likes to help out in the cafeteria. He's not forced. He wants to do it. Well, he's built that bond with our custodian that he takes it as a responsibility. This is a home away from home. It's our second home. And he's making those connections with a custodian. And for me, that's huge, because as a result of that, specifically for that student, he is making gains. He's wanting to learn more academically. He's being successful because he takes pride in what he does. That's on a side note. And I went on a word walk, but the other thing is, making sure that our teachers understand that when we build relationships with our students, with our parents, they're more likely to be engaged. They're more likely to take risks. I don't know how to do this yet, but they start learning. So it's building that relationship. Part of also with that, as you heard Laura, teachers communicate with our parents almost 24/7. I mean, it's continual, whether we do Class Dojo or Parent Square, there's always that constant communication to let them know what's working, what's not working, how they can help us when they're out, when they're not out. The other piece that we feel very strongly about is when our teachers are clearing those absences, they know what's happening with the student. Sometimes they're the ones that tell us, hey, so-and-so is not in school. He hasn't been here for 3 days. Then that starts where the attendance clerks lets me know. We have the counselor reach out. We have the teacher. We have the nurse. And it's a team effort that we're constantly working together. We provide professional development for our teachers because we also have to provide that support for them, where we have trauma-informed practices. There's been PD on that, challenging behaviors with our BCBA. We have social emotional learning constantly going, whether it's our counselor or we bring someone from the outside, and other topics that teachers are needing additional support. They let us know and we provide that support when it's appropriate. And we make a lot of research, whether it's articles, someone that comes in and brings that information to us. And it's a constant working together, because at the end of the day, the teacher is not alone. The student is not alone. It's everyone together, working together to make sure that students are successful, because that's why we're here. We're very lucky to have a full-time counselor, Miss Lily, we love. And let me just share some of the things that Laura mentioned. If the teachers find out that there's something going on with the student, they send the team an email. If the counselor is not able to reach the student right away, it will be me. If it's not me, then we'll have my assistant principal come into play, and we're working together to make sure that we support that student, because at the end of the day, that's why we're here for them. One of the other advantages that we have is that we have an after-school program. We actually have two. One, we have the Thrive program, where students are able to stay here until about 5 o'clock, and they get to choose and select which activities they want to do, whether it's culinary, robotics, art. There's different activities that they get to do, soccer. And that, to me, I feel that also helps the students. Instead of being home alone, most of our parents are working, they have a place to be at. The Assets program, the same, they have provide different opportunities for them so that they can be engaged and not be home on a tablet or on TV or a phone. They're actually doing things with other students. So that's one of the advantages. The other things that we do in the classroom is we build that relationship with students, with parents. We create that positive learning environment. Those morning check-ins, we started that last year, I believe last year, the year before, and they have been great. We notice a difference when students are able to share how they're feeling. And if they're not feeling well, they can either reach out to a counselor, they can reach out later on to the teacher, or sometimes I get those emails as well, and we connect with our students. You know, I'm very lucky that I'm able to go in and have those conversations with our students. Our social emotional learning, we have lessons every single week from our second step program. Our counselor also provides lessons in every classroom about different topics, and one of them is attendance and the importance of coming to school every single day on time and ready to go. And you'll hear students, they'll say, I don't have diarrhea, I don't have a fever, they'll tell you, you know, I don't have this, you need to come to school. That same message is constantly, and they will tell you, if you don't have a fever, diarrhea, or vomiting, you need to be in school. Constant.
And Maite, I know you, this is really helpful. It's great to lay out in the classroom. I know that we have about maybe a minute more for for your segment. So maybe we can go on to the next slide. You could just talk a little bit about the school infrastructure that's there too.
And then part of it is that team, right? We talked about the principal, parent liaison, counselor, our attendance clerk, and our nurse. We work very closely together. Sometimes we meet, we send emails, just talking about the different students. We have currently 38 students who are chronically absent. And out of those 38, I would say about 3/4 of them have improved their attendance. They were chronically absent because of illnesses, because they were sick for a week, 2 weeks, and we have everything documented. And that was one of the biggest advantages that I see working very closely with my attendance clerk, our nurse, our parent liaison, and our counselor, that we're able to talk about our students and being able to provide that support. We meet twice a month. We meet in the morning to help parents, for those of the parents that need to meet in the morning, and then we also meet in the afternoon. I've been known to do home visits if parents can't come to the meeting, or make phone calls, just to make it easier, because we don't want this process to be punitive. We want it to be, how can we help? And that's the approach that we have when we are meeting with our parents, is how can we help? Is it transportation? Is it health issues? Do you need an alarm clock? Is it counseling? I mean, the conversation, or just simply the conversation of sharing with the parent, Mom, Dad, when your child does not come to school for one day, is like they're out for 3 days, because it's the day that they're out, the next day that they have to catch up with the stuff that they missed, and then another day to catch up on the day that they were catching up for the day that they missed. So making them aware that how it impacts their child, it really opens up their eyes, you know. And at the end, we tell them, we're a team, we're here to help, how can we help? And working together, you know, it's that communication starts with our teachers, with our parents, our support staff, and we provide that support. And like I mentioned, professional development, communication, information, our counselor, our BCBA, our teachers. I mean, we cannot forget our teachers, but also our staff as a school. And then also we connect with outside agencies for those parents or families that need additional support.
Thank you so much, Maite. I want to shift from our elementary school again, going to our high school here. James, tell us what you do as a school at Camelback to really support attendance and ensure that teachers like Isis are able to promote that engagement and attendance every day.
Yeah, so happy to share a little bit about things we've done. You know, we're this big high school, a lot of moving parts, and you know, with teachers like Isis, she's so awesome, right? I just, whatever she asks, I make sure she gets, right? that question answers easy. But let me just share, you know, in a high school with so many employees in the 9th grade, what we've done is we've taken the 600, we'll call it 600 9th graders, we split them into 4 teams. And so that, you know, 130 or so students all have the same core content teachers. So those 130 students have the same math teacher, have the same English teacher, have the same science teacher. And so the first and most important step is that those 3 teachers who share kids all have the same prep. Attendance is a collective issue, and if you try and handle it one by one, you will fail. So with a common prep, we've now created the conditions where 3 educators, a principal, a freshman house coordinator, and some other folks can kind of collaborate on things going on. So if you look at our slide here, you know, we have created these 9th grade success teams. Actually, if we can go to the next one real quick. These 9th grade success teams that meet on a weekly basis to discuss and align supports for their students. So this is This is the definition of our freshman house, and this is a strategy and structure that we've learned from the Center for High School Success. Karin will talk about that in a little bit, but we meet weekly. We have our core content teachers, and we ask a lot of questions. So we put a kid's name up there. We say, oh, wow, they have 6 absences. Tell us one positive thing. Got to start with the positive. You can't ever lose sight of that. And then let's start investigating. What are they like in science? What are they like in math? What are they like in English? And if we go to the next slide here as well. Sorry, I'm one too far ahead. But these freshman house teams, these 9th grade success teams, they also include a counselor, an attendance liaison, a freshman house coordinator, and administrator. And I think that's really important because there's some things the teacher can and should do, and there's some things that the principal can and should do. And so when we're all in the space together, we can kind of assign our different roles and walk out of that meeting with knowing our next steps to support the kiddo. Actually, I should say knowing our next steps to investigate a method of support for a kiddo, because there are no silver bullets in this work. It's very much case by case and trying to take an inquiry approach. And I think in a high school, that's the most important thing, because there's so many kids in the high school that you really have to try and investigate each scenario. So to that point, what you see on the screen now is we've actually developed what we call the CARE survey. And so we always ask everyone but the kid what's going on. And so the CARE survey is an opportunity to ask the student, particularly in high school. These are conscious, somewhat mature, depending individuals who can communicate their needs. And so, you know, you can see one of the questions in our CARE survey simply asks, what are you dealing with? What are you struggling with? Do you need a resource on this? And then depending on how they answer, we try and align some supports. And so we can get some hard data from the kid's perspective on what to do next. If you can go to the next slide here. So this is what, you know, it would actually show up as, you know, a student's result. I feel connected to at least one student at school, right? So this student said strongly disagree. Well, if you disagree, you're connected to anyone, that's why you're not coming to school. And so the teacher's job in that sense becomes less about teaching you math on Monday and more about getting you connected to a peer on Monday, right? Because then our hypothesis is that you need to just feel connected and maybe you'll come to school more often. And then if we can go to the next slide, I think the final piece of this is just trying to triangulate the data, right? So we have an opportunity. Attendance data is easy. I'm James. James's absence X number of days. Grade data is easy. I'm James. I'm failing 1 class. But can we put the grade and attendance data next to the social emotional data? And so what you'd see in this little screenshot, this is a real Excel sheet we would use, is, you know, this is a course, this is a kid's grade, it's the team they're on. But then after that, it's the social emotional questions. Are you connected? Are you connected to an adult? Are you connected to a kid? Are you interested in joining a club? You know, every school has a different set of questions they might ask based on their context. But the point is that you ask them. And then you put the answers to those questions next to the data you have about the kid. And then from that point, you can create better hypotheses. You can conduct better investigations about what will get those kiddos to school, passing class, and ready to finish high school.
James, who does this? Who gives this survey?
So, sort of the leadership team has created the survey. The teachers, we have a period called advisory. They give the survey. The data comes back to the leadership team, and we triage immediately, right? A student says we need clothing, let's get on that right away. But then what we do is it's a little complicated in our context, but if you have a program like Panorama, you could do this with Panorama. We send this back to the teachers and they can just plug in a kid's name and all the data will populate for them. And so they can just boom, 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 start to create investigations based on what populates in each column. The key takeaway here is just the holistic approach. I think so often we get stuck on the grade or we get stuck on the attendance, and there's more information we could consider when looking to support the students that are in our schools.
And I'm going to just respond to a couple things. James, I think you would be willing to give us a copy of this that we can share blank copy? Because you
Yeah.
guys, this is a homegrown survey, right?
This is homegrown. Yeah, this is homegrown. TM, Camelback. No, it's Phoenix Union, I should say. TM, Phoenix Union High School District. But no. We're happy to share. I think I have a PDF, type of resource I could share.
All right, and I'm going to keep with the data and ask Karen Andrews, who's the National Director of the Center for High School Success, because I know that part of what the structure that you've talked about at the high school level is supported by the Center for High School Success, trying to really make sure that many high schools can create the same kind of approach that really allows for that 9th grade success. And Karen, I know that data is a key piece of this. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how is it we provide teachers with the data they need to take data-informed action?
Right. Hi everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm Karen Andrews, like Hetty said, and we do work really closely with Camelback and also another 180 or so high schools across the country on 9th grade success. And I think a foundational piece when you're talking about what data do you need is you sort of have to start with a foundational understanding of why, right? Why are we doing this work for 9th graders? And so I just want to say a quick piece on that before jumping into the attendance data. 9th grade course performance or grades determines who will graduate from high school and who will be successful in post-secondary options, college and career. And in the transition to high school, students start failing courses 3 to 5 times more than in any other grade level, and unexcused absences quadruple from 8th to 9th grade. So we have this mismatch. We know that kids really need to be successful and pass all of their classes in 9th grade, what we call on track, stay on track, and they're going to fail a lot. There's a higher likelihood of failing and being absent more. So the structures that James and Isis talked about in the high school, creating small teams where the kids share the same teachers, the teachers can meet, they have this structure in place and they can talk about the kids, looking at the data, do quick interventions and keep kids on track is really, really important. And, they do it well. When I walked into Camelback last month, a student who was walking me in I asked what makes this school special. And she said, no one is lonely at Camelback. Just want to say that, so it's clearly a priority. In what data is important for teachers to look at in these teacher teams, we have to not just look at what's the percent of kids who are attending every day, or what's the percentage that a kid is attended across the year, because there are trends. If you go to the next slide, I'm going to come back to this one. If you look at these 4 kids right here, 4 high school kids, their average attendance at the bottom is between 75 and 81% overall, right? But you can't understand what's going on from that. That's the average attendance across the year. So if you set a warning, you said our key performance indicator is 75 to 85% attendance, and then we're going to do something, an intervention with this group of kids, you wouldn't be able to tell what to do by that. Because if you look at like a 10-day attendance report, this first kid, Javon, he has 0 absences. His attendance is trending up. So things have gotten better and he is there, right? Then the next student on the 30-day absence report missed 15 days. They were excused. Okay, different situation. And then the next student misses every Monday, has 81% overall, but is missing 20% of school every week. And then the last student is missing different periods of attendance, periods of school across the day. And we need to delve into a different, identify what is the root cause of these things. So what we would do here is we would advise to gain more information in certain situations. Like, for example, with Tanya, I would say, let's do an empathy interview. Let's have a one-on-one conversation with her and find out what's happening that's keeping her from coming to school on Mondays, because it's obviously something different than what is happening on the other days of the week. And if we have that conversation with her and we find out, for example, that maybe a parent goes away for the weekend to work and she's responsible for getting her siblings to school on Mondays, every Monday until that parent comes back. Well, there's something we can do with that. You know, we can reach out and to the elementary schools, or, you know, try to figure out some other attendance options for the kids, transportation options. We can work with Tanya on that, right? And the family. If Fernando, for example, is missing, we need to do the same thing with him and say, why is it that you're missing this many, 30 classes across the last month? Like, what's going on? And oftentimes what we'll find when we get into those root cause conversations, it's, when you go to, we first have to look at basic needs and take care of those, like James showed in the care survey. You can quickly look and see sometimes they need something in order to get to school. And if it's not one of the basic needs that we think of first, then I love what they said, because we really believe that belonging is a basic need. And if you don't have that, then you're not going to want to come to school. So that's like first realm. Those teams say, okay, do you have an adult that you connect to at school? And if not, right away, that's first round, immediately going to that kid and trying to figure out how to build an authentic relationship that shows him or her that they matter. And
Karen, can you take another minute or two just to kind of summarize this section where we're starting to get pretty close to where we need to move in Q&A, and I want to also make sure that we have a chance to hear from Livingston Union School District. So I know you have another slide.
Yeah, go ahead and flip to the last slide here, and just say, just want to say that the tier 1 across in high schools is the same as in elementary schools. Kids need to be they need to be seen and heard across their whole day. They need to be seen and heard across the year, and they need to be monitored, and we need to intervene when things start to go wrong, or when student struggle is identified. And that's what we do. We work with schools to help increase attendance and increase their capacity to be successful. If attendance is the problem, then we really work on that. But really, attendance is just the problem that you can see, and there's always something behind it. And that leads obviously to kids being on track, and ninth graders are on track. When ninth graders are on track, they actually graduate from high school 3 times. They are 3 times more likely to graduate. So it's critical, and that's the place to start when you're in a high school. Instead of saying, we're going to do everything for all grades, start with ninth grade.
Absolutely. And so appreciate how the nuanced understanding of the quantitative data combined with the deep understanding of qualitative information, the empathy interviews, the surveys, so that you can really get a whole picture. Now, I want to turn over to Maria Torres Perez, who's one of the administrators over at Livingston Union School District. And Maria, I want, and why don't we shift to Maria's slides? Talk to us about how, as a district, you support this fabulous work happening in your schools. So let's go to the next slide.
Yes. So good afternoon, everyone from sunny Central Valley, California. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. And in order for our teachers to feel supported, in order for our administrators to feel supported, the district plays a key role in ensuring that all systems are in place and the systems work well. In Livingston, we value family engagement greatly, and we engage families through communication on an ongoing basis all year long. We do that via school communications, district communications, newsletters, attendance campaigns, and communications regarding attendance campaigns. And through our district school home communication platform, we share a variety of resources throughout the year about student attendance, students' health and wellness, just a variety of resources. We also engage community partners, and those would include our health clinics, county office of education, county agencies that provide homeless and housing services. and our district attorney's office to help address the root causes. So at the school level, as you heard, teachers, counselors, principals, the site team is fully engaged in ensuring that our students are in school. So when they reach out to the district for support, in that process, we also reach out to county agencies and other folks that are part of the team to support school attendance. In Livingston, we've made a very conscientious effort to strategize the use of funds. So in California, we have the process called Local Control Accountability Plan. And in that process, districts prioritize funding based on input from educational partners. Input from our educational partners through the LCAP process has indicated that we are on the right track. As my team members shared, Livingston is in a rural community, so transportation to school and from school is a key aspect of being in school. So we have prioritized funding to provide transportation for students who live outside the walking to school limits. We have also prioritized funding for school counselors. Each of our elementary schools has one counselor, and you heard from Maite how valued counselors are. Our middle school had 2 counselors as of last year. As of this year, they now have 3. Health services staff we have health staff at all schools, and we have a very highly engaged school nurse. We have attendance support staff that are part of that outreach team at the school level. Parent liaisons are also part of that outreach team. And we place a significant amount of funds in our budget to enhance school climate and culture. So those are some examples of that strategic use of funds. As far as coordination of other services, I serve a role in coordinating the availability of attendance data, making sure that staff at all levels has access to data as it relates to student attendance. I also support the principals with the coordination of the school attendance review teams at the school level. You heard Maite mention that she meets with her site level team once or twice a month and invites parents to come to the school to meet and talk about root causes of the situation, and through that process offers support and services. And at the district level, we have the School Attendance Review Board, which I chair, and that is for cases of severe chronic absenteeism. And again, we approach it from a supportive place where we want to, even at that level, we want to support families, and we want to know what are the circumstances that have gotten us here, but still in the role of support.
Thank you so much, Maria. I want to ask, I guess Maria, Maite, and also James, are unions involved in your work in your school? Are unions present in your districts? And how have you been able to negotiate this work, particularly the work with teachers, as part of what unions will agree to? So either any of you have unions present in your districts, and how is that?
In Livingston, we do have a teachers union, yes. The efforts that we support throughout the district are I would say, highly supported by teachers at all levels and administration at all levels, because it's always been part of our culture that student attendance is everybody's business. And if the students aren't in school, then they can't be taught, they can't learn. So it's always been a message of it's a team effort.
And I'm going to ask, actually, Pele, can you take down the slides for a second, though I will have you bring them back in a moment. James, where does the role of unions in this?
So we technically don't have unions, we have associations, but it's kind of funny. Isis is actually in the core. She's like on the executive team of the union. So she's kicking my butt all the time on various topics. But we align on many things, but freshman house being one of them. I think it's trying to get to the root, sort of our root cause, our root reason for being. And the truth is, if we let attendance get out of hand, like, we won't have jobs. So at a very basic level, we need to norm that this is an important topic. And then I think I don't want to speak for ISIS, but what we have seen is that these proactive measures make working conditions better for everyone, right? Like, no one wants to be banging their head against the wall, feeling like you're on an island. And so, yes, the success team, the meeting on preps, that's outside of the norm, but it's like a positive feedback loop once you start. And we joke that often we cancel team meetings and they still meet. We're like, guys, you didn't have to this week, but they still do, because again, it becomes a positive feedback loop. And
so James, one question I'm going to ask you, or maybe to ISIS. There's folks who are like, there are some teachers here who just don't want to be involved in this, and they are like resistant. What is your advice to the school or the administrator who's like, I've got teachers and I don't know how to get them engaged?
I would just say, first, you hire teachers like ISIS. And what I mean by that is, I mean that seriously. When we interview teachers, we do not ask them about how they teach math. We do not ask them about how they teach English. We ask them, how do you build relationships? We ask them, how do you collaborate with others? And so the administrators on here, your most important job is hiring your staff. And so the way you hire your staff is reflective of the questions you ask. And so we ask questions that tell us if you teach kids or if you teach content, and we want people who teach kids.
Anything you would add to that, Isis, as a teacher?
No, I agree with what James is saying. So I taught middle school for 7 years, and then so this is my second district that I've taught for, and I've been here for 11. And 100%, I agree with what he's saying. It's very important. You could always teach someone strategies on how to present material better, how to break it down. You could always bring somebody to help them out, right? Like support groups and things like that. But something that's really difficult to teach is somebody to have like a positive and growing mindset. That's really hard to teach, because once more, right, going back to the attendance thing, we want our students to buy in on the power of them being at school every day, and the power and of being able to have a high school diploma and how that's going to help them in the future. It's the same thing for teachers. Like, the teachers have to believe in the process, right? And some of those sacrifices that we have to make as teachers is that sometimes we do meet. And as a matter of fact, we're meeting on Friday this week. My team is, because we haven't been able to meet for 2 weeks now because of testing. And we're like, no, we have to meet. We haven't met in 2 weeks. Like, I have some things to discuss with you. So it turns into one of those things where it's like, look, I need support with the kid, and we all need to meet because I'm out of ideas here. Like, I need you all. And that's what it comes down to. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it 100%, it's about the type of people that you want in your teams, the type of people that you want that are willing to be flexible, because honestly, a lot of this is flexibility. I'm not always on board with everything. Mr. Arndt will tell you that. James will tell you that. I'm not always on board with everything, but sometimes I have to be like, okay, it's good for the cause. The majority of you, I respect my colleagues. I'm going to go with the flow.
All right. I know we are running. I'm going to actually ask Pele to pull up the next to the slides, and I want you to start with slide 45, if you will, for a moment. Wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much. This is, and I could see all the nodding of heads, like Maite nodding to what James is saying. So there is a really common vibe, even though your two schools are in very different situations, and the hiring of teachers and the creating of environments for collaboration is so essential. I want to say these key ingredients of change, which is what we at Attendance Works say is important for any effort, but it also applying to the teachers, how we build capacity, and that's creating that teaming so that people can work together. And I also saw notes, by the way, a question about how do you make attendance teams more effective? Because what they saw is, I think in their team, they're either just problem solving on each kid, or they're just talking about attendance incentives, each of which don't really get at the issues of how do you take a systems approach to understanding the barriers and then putting in place the solutions you need as a whole school, not just a handful of people, to improve attendance. And I think what you heard here is the kind of data plus teaming and collaboration that allows you to take a deeper approach, using that data to think about how do you engage kids, how do you have strategic partnerships, who needs more resources, how do you think about shared accountability and really shared responsibility for this work, and building the capacity for all of that to do this. I will say, next slide real quick. This is also taking a year-long approach. And this is another way to make it more manageable. We're right now in spring. We got to create and deepen that sense of belonging while we still have our kids for the next couple of months. We can then engage and build bridges. One thing I would add to what Maite has, we've also seen in theirs is they do summer kindergarten camps. I think you also for high schools do transition into 9th grade camps. And then in both schools, I think there's a lot of attention in those first months of school about how do you make sure kids know how they're supposed to be in school, kindergartners or 9th graders, creating that sense of community and ensuring support. And so folks, thinking about what you need to do at different parts during the year is so key. I want to go to the next slide. I'm going to just bomb through a couple of resources. We kind of talked about the role of community partners, but just know you've got our attendance awareness campaign, free resources, make them your own, tailor them to what you need them to be. Next slide. Part of our work is having this Count Us In toolkit. Next slide. This is also about using our social media to promote understanding of these issues. Next slide. It's also, we all have a proclamations because we need our key elected officials to be on board and supporting us with the resources that we need to do this work. Next slide. And we also have resources like our Showing Up Matters for Real. Next slide. And we have a whole variety of handouts. We know anxiety is a big issue. So this one that might be particularly helpful. Next slide. And I'm now going to turn it over to Kwesi to give us some final words and also talk a little bit about the opportunity with their National Community Schools Conference.
So great day. I mean, I think it's all been said. Thanks so much to our principals, our teachers, our district person, and our National High School Center person. It's quite clear that we've got to keep a growth mindset, and of course we can change the numbers. We can definitely improve attendance, and you heard a lot of examples of how and why. You heard some great leadership from principals. You heard great leadership across the board, which reflected high expectation and lots of love for community. You can find out more at our National Community Schools and Family Engagement Conference, where we'll dive deep into chronic absenteeism and many other things. And again, thanks. This was it was so great that we ran out of time and we still have 600 people online. So that's what we call an indicator. I'm not a researcher, but that's an indicator of something. So we'll post the recording soon. Next slide. Let us know how we can improve. This is the link. It's probably in the chat as well to the survey. Thanks again. Special thanks to Heising Simons Foundation and our individual donors for your ongoing support. Next slide. That's the last slide. Oh, the next slide is farewell.
Thank you, everyone, for all your attention. And thank you, our amazing panelists, for your inspiring advice and insights.
Take care, everyone.